Most of my family had yet to arrive when I showed up at the private club. Finding a quiet corner, I turned on my laptop to study a complex medical case. With the patient's condition worsening to a critical point, I needed to devise the best surgical plan as soon as possible. I was still deep in research when Simon Ziegler and Yasmin Sawyer arrived at the club. The family immediately rose from their seats and swarmed the couple upon seeing them. They showered Simon and Yasmin with praise, exclaiming, "Yasmin is so lucky to have married such a talented young man. Simon, it's incredible that someone your age has become an overseas sensation. Is it true the Art Association invited you to showcase your work at the upcoming exhibition, Simon? How marvelous. You've brought great honor to our family. Simon, my son is a huge fan. He's passionate about art and sees you as an inspiration. Could you give him a few pointers when you have time?" Yasmin blinked before looping her arm through Simon's, grinning. "There's no need for such formalities. We're family, and Simon would be happy to guide the young one in his artistic journey. Tell him to call Simon whenever he wants advice." That was all it took to set the relatives abuzz as they fawned over Simon and Yasmin, eager to use their distant connection to secure a brighter future for their children. Simon lifted his chin slightly, basking in the flattery as the sycophants continued their praise. Having finished my work, I pulled out my earphones and yawned. The sound broke through the chatter, drawing everyone's attention. "What's Olivia Langston doing here? I thought she hated these gatherings," someone muttered under their breath, loud enough for Simon to hear. His expression turned arrogant as he narrowed his eyes at the speaker. "Has Olivia been skipping family gatherings the last few years?" The person nodded and Simon sneered. "Simon and I had been reborn 6 years ago. On the day we received our marriage license and went to see our family, he had charged toward Yasmin, thrown his arms around her, and declared his love for her in front of everyone. What's Olivia Langston doing here? I thought she hated these gatherings," someone groused under their breath, just loud enough to catch Simon's attention. His expression turned sharp with arrogance as he narrowed his eyes at the speaker. "Has Olivia been skipping family gatherings for the last few years?" The person nodded and Simon sneered. "Simon and I had been reborn 6 years ago. The day we got our marriage license and went to see our family, he had charged toward Yasmin, thrown his arms around her, and in front of everyone, declared his love for her. She had broken down in tears as if she had just survived a great war. After that, Simon demanded a divorce, confessing that Yasmin was his true love. The shock had been palpable. Jaws had dropped at the sudden turn of events. And now, those same people were here at the private club, fawning over the very man who had humiliated me. "Olivia works at City Hospital now," someone murmured. "She juggles day and night shifts, so she never shows up at our gatherings." "Then why today, of all days?" another speculated. "Maybe she came to get Simon's attention after what happened 6 years ago. Simon's a big-shot artist now, and Yasmin is his manager. They make a golden couple, if not a match made in heaven. Olivia must be out of her mind if she thinks she can rekindle old flames with him." Simon remained indifferent to the remarks, pulling Yasmin into his arms. "That's all in the past. Yasmin is the love of my life." A hush fell over the crowd. There was no point in dredging up history now that Simon and Yasmin were married and thriving. I barely spared them a glance as I turned to the waiter and ordered a drink. Sipping my fresh squeezed orange juice, I prayed my parents would arrive soon to make their announcement. I had a shift to cover at the hospital. But Yasmin seemed intent on ruining my peace. She sauntered up to me, her hips swaying, before reaching out to toy with a lock of my hair. "Olive, you need a good spa day. All those late nights have turned your hair as dry as hay." Immediately, all eyes were on me. The elders seized the opportunity to chime in. One tutted, "I don't know why Olivia chose to become an ER doctor. Of all the careers she could have pursued, she picked one that pays next to nothing and wears her down with work. No wonder she's still single and pushing 30. Another sighed in disappointment. "No wonder she's been avoiding family gatherings. She hasn't made anything of herself." I met Yasmin's condescending gaze before letting my eyes sweep over her and Simon. Her dark hair was styled in an elegant updo, and she wore a designer cashmere coat, accessorized with select pieces of high-end jewelry. Every detail screamed wealth and privilege. As for Simon, he was clad in a suit that matched Yasmin's coat, with only a wedding band on his finger. His stoic demeanor and detached arrogance made him look like the quintessential male lead from a romance novel. It wasn't hard to see why they were hailed as the golden couple. Now that I really looked at them, they did make a good match. Suppressing a sigh, I rubbed my temples and took a step back. "Are you done yapping, Yasmin? If so, could you back off? Your cheap perfume is giving me a headache." Yasmin's face darkened, but before she could retort, Simon valiantly stepped in. "Cut the attitude, Olivia. Yasmin is only worried about you." I frowned, my patience thinning. But for the sake of today's occasion, I reined in my temper. "I'm not giving her attitude. I've had a long day at work and I'm too tired for small talk. So do me a favor and back off." Simon scowled. I didn't blame him. He was used to being idolized, to having people fawn over him. Knowing him, he probably assumed I was still hung up on him, still envious of his so-called perfect life. My indifference had caught him off guard. Sensing his irritation, Yasmin quickly stepped in, all smiles. "Honey, this is a family gathering. No picking fights with Olivia." "We should be more understanding," she added, her voice dripping with false concern. After all, she must still be holding a grudge after what happened 6 years ago. Simon's expression softened instantly. Stroking Yasmin's hair, he murmured, "You're my better half, Yasmin. You've always been such a considerate angel to everyone." Then, turning to me, he sneered. "You're still as stubborn and insufferable as ever, Olivia. Maybe things would have been different if you'd learned to be softer, more tender." My mind went blank at Simon's words. In our past lives, we had met while traveling. What started as chance encounters turned into companionship, and before long, we became travel buddies. It felt only natural when our friendship deepened into something more. For the first few years, we were happy. We dreamed, explored, and built a life together. But everything changed after we got our marriage license. Our wedding was a joyous occasion, something to be celebrated. So we threw a party at a hotel, inviting family and friends to share in our happiness. Yasmin arrived fashionably late that night, stepping into the room in a striking red dress. Simon had gone still the moment he saw her. At the time, I thought nothing of it. But then, the subtle shifts began. He grew distracted, distant. At some point, he moved out of our shared bedroom. My instincts screamed that something was wrong, but I silenced them. Simon and I shared the same values. Our chemistry had always been strong. I refused to believe he would betray me. Yet the signs were there, his late nights, his secretive phone habits, the way his gaze flickered whenever Yasmin was around. I wanted to believe he was faithful, but the voice of reason whispered otherwise. Then, one night, the truth hit me like a wrecking ball. I came home from work and found them outside our house, Simon and Yasmin, locked in an intimate embrace. Despair clawed at my throat. My world tilted as I stormed toward them, demanding an explanation. How could he do this to me? Had I ever meant anything to him? But Simon's response shattered what little hope I had left. He shoved me to the ground, his grip bruising as he sneered down at me. "Look at yourself, Olivia. Your hair's a mess, you're unkempt, and the only color on your face is the dark circles under your eyes. You look like an old shrew." His words cut deeper than any blade. "Yasmin is better than you in every way," he continued mercilessly. "She's beautiful, polished, charming. She's my type. Our marriage was a mistake from the start." Gone was the man who once adored me, who used to worry when I worked late, who understood my drive to contribute to our family. He had been replaced by someone cold, cruel, and all because of her. Yasmin was everything I wasn't. Carefree, dazzling, effortlessly magnetic. Simon had chased after the thrill of something new, discarding me like yesterday's news. But boredom was never an excuse for betrayal. Our marriage was beyond saving. Simon asked for a divorce, and though I had lost everything, I couldn't bring myself to fight for someone who had already made his choice. I signed the papers, yet, even in the end, Yasmin wouldn't let me leave with dignity. She taunted me relentlessly, reveling in my downfall. Our argument grew heated, voices rising in the night air. None of us noticed the sports car speeding around the corner. When Simon asked for a divorce, I didn't fight him. Our marriage had crumbled beyond repair, and I had nothing left to hold on to. Our emotions ran high as we finalized our split, made worse by Yasmin's constant taunts. I was too caught up in our argument to notice the sports car speeding around the corner. I heard the screech of tires, then an explosion. Darkness swallowed me whole. When I opened my eyes, I was no longer at the accident scene. Instead, I was back on the day Simon and I had gotten our marriage license, the day we had planned to announce our union to family and friends. I had been given a second chance. Determined not to repeat my past mistakes, I stepped aside and gave Simon and Yasmin my blessing. They got together soon after and left for abroad to advance their careers. As for me, I returned to my true passion, medicine. My experience from my past life gave me an edge, and I quickly rose through the ranks in the emergency department, earning my place as a respected ER doctor. In this new life, I even found true love. I had finally escaped the cruel fate that once awaited me. At that moment, my family arrived at the private club, signaling the start of the gathering. My parents entered, linking arms, their faces lighting up when they spotted me. "Olive, have you greeted your elders?" my mother asked. I gestured toward the most crowded corner of the lounge, my smile laced with irony. "They're too busy to notice me. Yasmin and Simon just got back from abroad." Their faces darkened, but they said nothing. It was no surprise. Our relatives were quick to fawn over success, even if it came at my expense. As we approached the group, I could already hear them whispering. "I know Simon messed up by marrying Olivia first, but if not for that mistake, he wouldn't have met Yasmin. It must be fate. Olivia is a good kid, but she's so surly and stubborn. It's been 6 years. She should be over the divorce by now. She should try to stay on Simon and Yasmin's good side if she ever wants their help." "Oh, tell me about it. It wasn't even that big of a deal. She was so dramatic. She should stop making things awkward for the family." As my relatives prattled on, Yasmin smiled sweetly, but I caught the smug gleam in her eyes. She raised her glass in my direction. "Don't take their words personally, Olivia," she said in a syrupy tone. "As your cousin, I'll always be here to help if you ever need a favor." Simon smirked. "You're an adult now. Learn how to conduct yourself in society. There's only so much we can do for you." I felt my mother tremble with rage beside me. Before she could say anything, I gently held her back and smiled at Simon and Yasmin. "You're right." Without another word, I led my parents to our seats. As the waiters arrived with the pre-ordered dishes, guests raised their glasses, eagerly urging Simon to share stories of his time abroad. "With so many talented artists out there, it must have been hard for you to stand out," someone remarked. Simon draped an arm around Yasmin and pressed a kiss to her cheek before responding. It was tough, but Yasmin kept me going. If not for her, I might have given up and settled for a boring office job. Yasmin gazed at him adoringly. "Simon doesn't give himself enough credit. His talent speaks for itself." "Oh, what a perfect couple. You complement each other so well. It's clear Simon made the right choice leaving Olivia for Yasmin." The conversation spiraled into yet another round of backhanded jabs at me. To them, I was nothing more than an obstacle Simon had to overcome to find his true love. My mother's hands clenched into fists. Leaning close, she muttered, "I don't see what the fuss is about. He sold a few paintings. So what? And yet they won't stop fawning over him. They should leave you out of it. Watch them change their tune once Aaron arrives." At the mention of my fiancé, Aaron Hartman, I couldn't help but smile. My relatives were so busy lavishing Simon with praise that they seemed to forget something important. My parents were the real hosts of this gathering. My parents and I remained silent, waiting for our moment. It wasn't until a waiter approached me to inform me that the dishes had been served that the rest of the table finally acknowledged our presence. Simon glanced around the private club, taking in the luxurious surroundings. Located in the heart of the city, the club's hallways were adorned with a priceless personal art collection, and its patrons were people of influence. Even the most understated crystal chandelier here carried a six-figure price tag. With a sneer, he turned to me. "So, Olivia, I take it you're the host of this little family gathering? I never pegged you as someone who could afford even a slice of cake in a place like this on your measly paycheck. What, did you take a hefty bribe at the hospital and decide to flaunt it in front of the family?" I rolled my eyes, ignoring him. Instead, I took out my card and walked to the counter to settle the bill. As I made my way there, my phone rang. It was Aaron. He told me he'd be running late and gently reminded me to play nice with my family until he arrived. I smiled as we talked for a moment longer before heading back to the lounge. However, just as I reached the door, Simon stepped in front of me. He gave me a slow, disdainful once-over before tossing a wad of cash at my feet. "There's no need to put on a show, Olivia. Take the money and pay the bill. Consider it a generous gesture from an old friend." I nudged the money back toward him with my foot, my voice steady. "I don't need your money, and frankly, this wouldn't even be enough to cover—" "Oh, cut the crap," he interrupted with a scoff. "I know exactly how much you make at that hospital. I told you back when we divorced to quit that pathetic job. It's nothing but hard labor for little pay. What's the point?" I let out an exasperated sigh, rolling my eyes. Simon liked to present himself as an artist who valued passion above all else, but in reality, he only cared about money. My family knew this too, but none of them had the nerve or the standing to call him out on it. Not wanting to waste any more time on him, I stepped forward to enter the lounge. I had barely taken 2 steps when I found Yasmin blocking my path. She slipped her arm through Simon's and cooed in a high-pitched voice, "Honey, why don't you show everyone some of your artwork?" Simon smirked and pinched her cheek affectionately before nodding. Just as I reached for the lounge door, Yasmin stopped me again, her expression laced with false sympathy. "Olive, I hope you finally let go of any foolish thoughts about Simon," she said, tilting her head. "He's my husband now, and your cousin-in-law for that matter." I rolled my eyes at him in exasperation. Simon's carefully curated image as a man who valued art above all else crumbled in that moment. He wasn't driven by passion, only greed. My family knew it, yet none of them had the nerve or the standing to call him out on it. I didn't bother wasting my breath on him. Instead, I made to brush past him and head into the lounge. I had barely taken 2 steps when I ran into Yasmin. She looped her arm through Simon's and said in a high-pitched voice, "Honey, why don't you show the family some of your artwork?" Simon pinched her cheek affectionately before nodding. I reached for the lounge door, but Yasmin stepped in front of me again, her expression filled with false pity. "Olive, I hope you've finally given up any foolish thoughts about Simon," she said, tilting her head mockingly. "He's my husband now, and your cousin-in-law for that matter." Then she scoffed, her voice dripping with disdain. "I know you set up this dinner just to get close to us. But let's be honest, your pathetic life is your own doing. If you think we'll take pity on you just because we're family, you're wrong. And this little scheme of yours? It's just making us hate you even more." I raised an eyebrow but didn't dignify her accusations with a response. Instead, I simply said, "Very well." She and Simon were truly a perfect match. 2 self-absorbed people who thrived on delusions and twisting reality to suit their narrative. If only they knew how little anyone actually thought of them. As for me, I couldn't care less about either of them. Once Simon and Yasmin left, the family finally turned their attention to me and my parents. My uncle, Charles Olson, was the first to speak. "Joan, Peter, are we celebrating something? What's with the sudden party?" My parents exchanged a knowing look before my mother reached for my hand. "We have good news to share with the family." I was about to speak when the lounge doors burst open. Yasmin stormed in, fury twisting her features. "Did you destroy Simon's painting?" she hissed. "That painting was meant for an auction. It's worth at least $5 million. Simon followed closely behind, his glare sharp as he held up the ruined canvas. "And to think I actually offered you money to help you out. This is how you repay me? By sneaking off to the front desk and destroying my painting? Just how low will you stoop, Olivia? My gaze fell on the painting. The once vibrant colors were now marred with dark splotches, completely ruining the piece. I looked back at Yasmin and Simon, their faces contorted with rage. Annoyance simmered within me. I've never even seen that painting before, I said evenly. Instead of throwing baseless accusations, why don't you check the security footage? I was exhausted after a long day of work, and all I wanted was to share the good news with my family and go home. Yasmin sneered. Simon and I have bodyguards with us at all times, and we left the painting at the front desk. You were the only one who went to the counter to pay the bill. Who else could it be? Uneasy murmurs spread among my relatives as they turned to me. Olive, just apologize and get this over with, one of them urged. You were the only one who stepped out. That's right, Olivia, another chimed in. $5 million is no small amount. How will you pay for it if Yasmin insists on compensation? Just say you're sorry. Yasmin crossed her arms and lifted her chin arrogantly. Since we're family, I'm willing to let you off for $2 million, but only if you get on your knees and apologize. Simon set the painting down and hissed through gritted teeth. Just apologize, Olivia, and we'll let this slide. If not, we'll see you in court. I pinched the bridge of my nose, exhaling sharply. I already told you. I had nothing to do with this. If you don't believe me, call the cops. The tension in the room was thick. Waiters peeked inside, drawn by the commotion, but before they could step in, they paused. Their expressions shifted as they turned their attention to someone just outside the door. The air in the lounge suddenly changed. As voices rose in a clamor, I was suddenly pulled into a warm embrace. A deep, familiar voice rumbled against my ear. What's the matter, sweetheart? Aaron's eyes darkened with concern as he studied my face. Is it another one of your headaches? Before I could respond, he placed the heels of his hands against my temples, gently massaging them as if we were the only two people in the room. His touch was firm, yet soothing. His presence a welcome comfort amid the suffocating tension. Yasmin narrowed her eyes. Who are you? She demanded, her voice laced with suspicion. Aaron's gaze shifted to her, and for a brief moment, an unreadable storm crossed his features. Before he could reply, the club manager hurried in, nearly breathless. Mr. Hartman, we weren't expecting you this evening, he said with an air of deference. Aaron nodded once, his expression cool. I'm here to announce my engagement to my fiancé's family. A stunned silence fell over the lounge. Then a voice broke through the hush. He's Aaron Hartman, the chairman of Hartman Group. My younger cousin, Jan Olsen, exclaimed, his voice filled with disbelief. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The name Hartman Group carried immense weight in Grestonia. It was a corporate titan, woven into nearly every facet of daily life. My relatives gawked at Aaron, their previous disdain for me momentarily forgotten. But I wasn't concerned with their reactions. Instead, I leaned into Aaron's embrace, my exhaustion creeping into my voice as I recounted what had just happened. They're accusing me of ruining Simon's painting. Aaron's expression darkened instantly. Without hesitation, he turned to the manager. Retrieve the security footage. The blood drained from Yasmin's face. She stiffened before stepping forward, forcing a smile. There's no need for that. It's really not a big deal. I can overlook my cousin's mistake. Aaron barely spared her a glance as he issued a curt command. Go. The manager hesitated only briefly before nodding and hurrying away. Aaron then turned back to Yasmin, his voice deadly calm. Ms. Sawyer, this involves a $5 million painting. That's not a trivial matter. If there's been wrongdoing, we must identify the perpetrator and pursue the proper legal consequences. A bead of sweat trickled down Yasmin's temple. She parted her lips, as if searching for an argument, but nothing came. Simon stood silently, his gaze fixed on the way Aaron held me. There was something unreadable in his expression. Whether it was resentment, jealousy, or something else entirely, I couldn't tell. From the crowd, my mother's voice rang out, warm and welcoming. Aaron, we're so glad you could make it. We've been waiting for you. Now that you're here, Why don't you share the good news with everyone?" Aaron's face softened as he greeted my mother respectfully. Then he turned to the room, his grip on my hand tightening slightly. "Good evening, everyone. I'm Olive's fiancé," he announced, his voice steady and sure. "We'll be holding our wedding a week from now, and we invited you here to share the news. This was meant to be a joyous occasion." He cast a brief glance at the ruined painting. "I didn't expect an accident to steal the spotlight." Murmurs of shock and intrigue spread through the room. My relatives, who had been so quick to condemn me moments ago, now looked at me with a mixture of disbelief and awe. And just like that, the power in the room shifted. As Aaron spoke, he shot a withering look at Yasmin and Simon, both of whom stood frozen in place. Simon, ever the actor, forced a sheepish smile at the sycophantic relatives who had been fawning over him just moments ago. Quickly regaining his composure, he laughed as if nothing had happened. "So, Olive has been seeing this fine and accomplished gentleman all this time. No wonder she kept turning down all the dates we tried to set her up on," he joked, his voice forced. "I can't believe she kept this a secret for so long," someone chimed in. "What a feat. Olive really leveled up. Mr. Hartman is far more distinguished than an artist. With a fiancé like that, why would she need to ruin a $5 million painting just to prove a point?" The same relatives who had belittled me earlier were now beaming, their words dripping with sudden admiration. It was sickening how quickly they changed their tune. Yasmin, desperate to regain control, interjected, "There's no need for the manager to retrieve the security footage." Aaron silenced her with a sharp look. "It's already being handled." The employees wasted no time. 10 minutes later, the footage played before the buzzing crowd. The truth unfolded on screen. After I had returned to the lounge, Yasmin had gone to the front desk to retrieve the painting. She then slinked into a secluded corner, pulled out a can of black paint, and splattered it all over the artwork. A collective grimace swept through the room. Yasmin's parents paled, their horror evident. They turned to Aaron, pleading desperately, but it was too late. He had already called the cops. Just like that, Yasmin was arrested for destroying an expensive piece of art. Simon, however, showed no concern for Yasmin. Instead, he rushed forward and blocked my path, his arms outstretched. Aaron's gaze turned stormy, but before he could react, I gave him a calm, amused look. "Wait for me in the car." His brows furrowed in reluctance, but he didn't argue. Instead, he pulled me close and kissed me, a deliberate, possessive act, as if marking his territory, before walking away. Simon watched the exchange in stunned silence. Then, as if snapping out of a trance, he scowled. "How could someone like you be with Aaron?" I tilted my head. Why not? His expression darkened, as though he couldn't fathom how I had moved on to someone better. I let out a quiet scoff and said coolly, "I've always been down to earth and hard-working. I'm good enough for anyone. You, on the other hand, are not as incredible as you think you are, Simon." For all his award-worthy acting, there was nothing truly special about him. I turned to leave, but he grabbed my wrist. His grip was tight, his fingers trembling slightly. His eyes were red at the corners. "I know I'm not extraordinary, Olivia," he whispered, his voice raw. "But you were my wife once. How could you be with someone else?" I stared at him, baffled by his logic. "We've been divorced for years, Simon. And in both lifetimes you divorced me and chose Yasmin." My voice was calm, but there was an edge of finality to it. "The only thing you should be doing now is getting out of my sight." Tears welled in his eyes, but he shook his head vehemently, still refusing to let go. "How did you and Aaron meet?" His question caught me off guard. I hesitated, unsure how to answer. Because the truth was, Simon, Yasmin, and I weren't the only ones who had been reborn after the accident that had ended our previous lives. Aaron had been there too. He had been crossing the road that night and was killed in the same accident. When he awoke, finding himself years in the past, he began investigating what had happened. That search led him to me. We spent time together, and over the years we fell in love. But my past with Simon had left scars so deep that it took 6 years before I finally agreed to get engaged. I pressed my lips into a thin line, pushing back the memories. "That's none of your business," I said icily. I spun on my heels and walked away. But Simon wasn't finished. He hurried after me, desperation in his voice. "Olive, do you still love me?" I was under no obligation to answer Simon. If anything, he should be grateful that I hadn't chosen to exact vengeance on him in this lifetime after the humiliation he put me through in the last one. As for Yasmin, my only concern was ensuring the authorities held her accountable. She had destroyed Simon's painting. Whether or not he pressed charges was his business. But one thing was certain. I would sue her for libel. What I hadn't expected was for the painting incident to unearth even deeper secrets. In a shocking twist, Simon ultimately decided to press charges against Yasmin, demanding the harshest possible punishment. Furious, Yasmin retaliated, dragging him down with her by accusing him of plagiarism. And just like that, the two of them turned on each other. It wasn't until the dust had settled that I learned the full extent of their betrayal. In our past lives, Yasmin had already been a manager, while Simon had only dabbled in art out of interest, lacking any true talent. Unfortunately, in the modern world, talent alone wasn't enough. Appearance and reputation mattered far more. After being reborn, Yasmin and Simon had traveled abroad under the guise of refining their craft. In reality, they had been buying paintings from unknown street artists, modifying them slightly, and passing them off as Simon's original masterpieces. With Yasmin orchestrating the deception, Simon quickly built a name for himself as a once-in-a-generation artistic genius. For a while, their con worked, but they couldn't keep up the illusion forever. When they were finally exposed as frauds overseas, they slithered back home, hoping to restart their schemes in familiar territory. Unfortunately for them, their downfall came even sooner than expected. When I heard the details, I felt nothing. No joy, no sympathy, no anger. Just a quiet curiosity as to why they hadn't simply chosen to live honest lives. But they were too blinded by greed to see the value in something so simple. These days, I barely had time to think about Simon or Yasmin. My work in the ER kept me busy, while Aaron took charge of our wedding preparations. It was just another hectic day when an emergency call came in. A serious multi-car pileup had occurred on the highway, and paramedics were requesting immediate medical assistance on site. I was dispatched to the crash scene without a second thought. The last person I expected to see lying among the injured was Simon. He was sprawled on the pavement in a pool of his own blood, his skin pale, his breath uneven. When his eyes locked onto mine, a flicker of something haunted and desperate crossed his face. His voice trembled. "Olive, am I going to die?" I remained silent, assessing his injuries, but then his voice cracked with something closer to pleading. "Will I be reborn?" His fingers weakly grasped at my sleeve, his grip faint but desperate. "I swear, if I get another chance, I won't make the same mistakes. I'll choose differently." A glimmer of hope shone in his eyes, as if he truly believed the heavens might grant him another do-over. I didn't know what had led him to this state, whether it was guilt, regret, or sheer terror, but I had no patience for his delusions. "Stop talking nonsense," I said tersely. "You owe it to yourself to fight for this life." Simon stared at me, his lips trembling as tears spilled down his cheeks. His voice was raw, almost childlike in its desperation. "You have to save me, Olive. Promise me. Promise you won't let me die here." His fingers tightened slightly around my wrist. "I know I was wrong. Everything was my fault. But I want to start over. I want to love you the way I should have." I stiffened. "I know better now," he continued, his voice cracking. "You were the only one who ever truly loved me. Yasmin only wanted me for money." His words faded as his strength gave out, his grip loosening. I stared down at him, expression unreadable. Simon had spent 2 lifetimes making the wrong choices. Now he was begging for another chance. But in this life, there were no more second chances left for him. I remained expressionless as I strapped the oxygen mask over Simon's nose and mouth, cutting off his incessant rambling. With the help of the other doctors, I wheeled him into the waiting ambulance before moving on to the next injured patient. We didn't stop working until the following night. Everyone was exhausted, our limbs heavy after performing back-to-back major surgeries. The air in the hospital was thick with fatigue, but there was also a quiet sense of accomplishment. Aaron had left a large order of late-night takeout in my office, and by the time we finished, the food was still warm. My colleagues dug into their meals, sipping on hot chowder, their tired faces lighting up with relief. "Your fiancé is a real keeper, Dr. Langston," one of the doctors remarked. "It's so thoughtful of him to bring us food 2 nights in a row. This is the first time we actually got to eat it while it was still hot, but please thank him for us." A rush of warmth spread through me at the mention of Aaron. I had barely taken 2 bites when a nurse burst into my office, panic written all over her face. "Dr. Langston, could you check on the patient in bed 16? I didn't wait for her to finish. Setting my food aside, I hurried toward the ward, barking orders for an emergency intervention as I ran down the corridor. But the moment I entered the room, I stopped short. Simon, his pale face turned toward me, his eyes filled with something between desperation and longing. "Olive," he whined, "you haven't come to see me in 2 days. Do I mean that little to you?" I stood frozen for a second, stunned by his audacity. "I know I was wrong," he continued. "Can you forgive me? I'll treat you better from now on, I promise." After days of grueling surgeries, my body was drained, my patience worn thin. But his words, his self-centered, delusional words, ignited something sharp and angry inside me. "Simon, this is an emergency ward," I snapped. "If you're stable, do not waste critical medical resources." His lips parted, as if stunned by my outburst. "And for the last time," I continued coldly, "I'm in love with someone else. Aaron and I are getting married in 3 days, so stop coming to me with your personal issues. Whatever regret you feel now is yours to deal with, not mine." Simon's expression twisted with disbelief. He gripped the sheets, his knuckles white. "I don't believe you," he whispered. "If you really love someone else, then why did you tend to me first at the crash scene?" I exhaled sharply, forcing myself to stay calm. "Because I'm a doctor, Simon, and a doctor's priority is to save the most critically injured patient first. That's all it ever was." His breathing grew uneven as I stepped back. Without hesitation, I turned to check his headboard. "Dr. Whitman is in charge of your case now. Don't call for me again." And with that, I walked out, leaving him behind. Simon's anguished voice rang out behind me. "No, you can't love someone else. You must still love me. I'll prove it somehow." I didn't stop. I didn't turn back. Simon had spent 2 lifetimes making the wrong choices, and in this one, I had made mine. Simon spent his days in the hospital coming up with new ways to draw attention to himself. His attending doctor and the nurses eventually gave up trying to placate him, deciding instead to push the responsibility onto me. Every day, they begged me to talk sense into him. Every day, I refused. Eventually, they must have grown too exhausted by his antics, because they pleaded with me one last time. "Just once," they said. "See him just once." That day, I finally entered the inpatient ward. Without a word, I sat in the chair beside his bed, crossed my arms and closed my eyes, hoping to get some rest. Simon, undeterred, picked up an apple and carefully peeled it before offering it to me. He flashed an earnest smile. "You must be tired, Olive. Here, have an apple." I opened my eyes and scoffed. "If you know I'm tired, why are you so hell-bent on making my life harder? Just focus on recovering and get out of here already, Simon. I'm sick of seeing you here." His eyes turned red, his voice quiet. "I just wanted to see you, so I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. I didn't take the apple. Tomorrow was my wedding day. After that, I'd finally get a well-earned break. By the time I returned to work, Simon would be discharged, and I'd finally be free of him. My shift ended with me begrudgingly pacifying him. When I stepped outside, Aaron was already waiting for me at the hospital entrance. He jogged over, took my hand, and smiled warmly. "You're officially on holiday now. At last, the great Dr. Langston has time for her beloved husband. I wrapped my arms around his waist, breathing in his familiar scent. With a tired hum, I murmured, "I finally get to take a breather. I'm exhausted." Aaron's expression darkened with concern. "Did something happen?" I gave him a brief rundown of Simon's hospital antics. By the time I finished, Aaron's jaw was set in a grim line. He pulled me into a firm embrace. "Get some rest," he said quietly but firmly. "I'll deal with Simon after he's discharged." Simon's expression twisted with disbelief. He gripped the sheets, his knuckles white. "I don't believe you," he whispered. "If you really love someone else, then why did you tend to me first at the crash scene?" I exhaled sharply, forcing myself to stay calm. "Because I'm a doctor, Simon, and a doctor's priority is to save the most critically injured patient first. That's all it ever was." His breathing grew uneven as I stepped back. Without hesitation, I turned to check his headboard. "Dr. Whitman is in charge of your case now. Don't call for me again." And with that, I walked out, leaving him behind. Simon's anguished voice rang out behind me. "No, you can't love someone else. You must still love me. I'll prove it somehow." I didn't stop. I didn't turn back. Simon had spent 2 lifetimes making the wrong choices, and in this one, I had made mine. Simon spent his days in the hospital coming up with new ways to draw attention to himself. His attending doctor and the nurses eventually gave up trying to placate him, deciding instead to push the responsibility onto me. Every day, they begged me to talk sense into him. Every day, I refused. Eventually, they must have grown too exhausted by his antics, because they pleaded with me one last time. "Just once," they said. "See him just once." That day, I finally entered the inpatient ward. Without a word, I sat in the chair beside his bed, crossed my arms and closed my eyes, hoping to get some rest. Simon, undeterred, picked up an apple and carefully peeled it before offering it to me. He flashed an earnest smile. "You must be tired, Olive. Here, have an apple." I opened my eyes and scoffed. "If you know I'm tired, why are you so hell-bent on making my life harder? Just focus on recovering and get out of here already, Simon. I'm sick of seeing you here." His eyes turned red, his voice quiet. "I just wanted to see you, so I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. I didn't take the apple. Tomorrow was my wedding day. After that, I'd finally get a well-earned break. By the time I returned to work, Simon would be discharged, and I'd finally be free of him. My shift ended with me begrudgingly pacifying him. When I stepped outside, Aaron was already waiting for me at the hospital entrance. He jogged over, took my hand, and smiled warmly. "You're officially on holiday now. At last, the great Dr. Langston has time for her beloved husband." I wrapped my arms around his waist, breathing in his familiar scent. With a tired hum, I murmured, "I finally get to take a breather. I'm exhausted." Aaron's expression darkened with concern. "Did something happen?" I gave him a brief rundown of Simon's hospital antics. By the time I finished, Aaron's jaw was set in a grim line. He pulled me into a firm embrace. "Get some rest," he said quietly but firmly. "I'll deal with Simon after he's discharged." Aaron had always taken care of my problems, always stood up for me. Hearing his solemn promise, I happily let him handle it. The moment we got home, I burrowed under the covers and slept through the night. I wouldn't have bothered waking up for my bridal makeup the next morning if my parents hadn't dragged me out of bed. Everything about the wedding was perfect. The venue was set up just as I had envisioned, and my dress, tailor-made by a renowned international designer, was a dream come true. Aaron had promised me the best when we first started dating, vowing to make up for all the pain I'd endured in my past relationship. Over the years, he had proven that promise to be true. But just before Aaron and I could exchange our vows, Simon showed up. He was suited up, seated in a wheelchair, and clutching a bouquet of fresh flowers. His eyes locked onto mine, filled with unwavering determination. "Olive," he declared, his voice ringing through the venue, "I won't let you marry anyone else. You were my wife in both lives. You will only marry me." A stunned silence fell over the crowd before an uproar broke out. Aaron's hand tightened around mine, his expression darkening with barely restrained fury. I gently patted his hand and lifted my dress, stepping down from the stage. Simon's eyes glittered with hope. He truly believed I was choosing him. I stopped in front of him, lowered my head to meet his gaze, and then, without hesitation, I slapped him across the face. I seethed. My wedding was perfect until you ruined it, Simon. How dare you show up here again? And what made you think I would ever choose you? Did you really believe I'd be charmed by your shameless, manipulative ways? Simon cupped his cheek, his expression a mix of shock and disbelief. Olive, we were given 2 chances at life. That can only mean one thing. The world revolves around us. I can do and have whatever I want as long as I wish for it. It worked on Yasmin, and it will work on you too. A chill ran down my spine as I took a step back. What are you talking about? I don't understand. Simon suddenly reached out, grabbing my arm in a vice-like grip. His eyes gleamed with something unhinged. I was wrong for cheating on you with Yasmin in our past life, Olive, he insisted, his voice frantic. You got mad and drove into us so that we'd all die in that crash. But then, we woke up. We were transported back to when we had just gotten married. At first I thought I loved Yasmin, so I left you for her. But now I see how foolish I was. It's always been you, Olive. I love you. I want to spend my life with you. My lips curled into a cold, mocking smile. What in the world are you babbling about? Before Simon could respond, Aaron had had enough. He stormed forward, effortlessly swatting Simon's hand away before pulling me into his embrace. Call the cops, he barked at the security guards. Tell them a madman just crashed our wedding. Simon's expression twisted into rage as he turned his murderous glare on Aaron. He looked ready to lunge. What did you just call me? I'm telling the truth. Aaron, you're just a wife stealer and you'll pay for this. I let out a sigh, shaking my head. Simon, I didn't think you'd be so distraught after Yasmin was thrown behind bars. Listen, Aaron and I will overlook the fact that you ruined our wedding. Instead, we'll make sure you receive proper treatment until you recover. As if on cue, the security guard stepped forward, ready to wheel him away. Panic flashed across Simon's face. What do you mean by that, Olive? I'm not sick. I really do love you. Don't do this to me, please. I'm sorry. His voice faded as he was escorted out of the venue. Aaron turned back to me, his expression softening as he gently took my hand and led me up the stage once more. With steady hands and full hearts, we exchanged rings. With a kiss, we sealed our vows. And as we stood there, basking in the warmth of our love, we silently thanked the misfortunes of our pasts, because they had led us to the blessings of our present. As for Simon, I reckoned he would spend a long time in an asylum, receiving the help he desperately needed. After all, the world doesn't revolve around anyone, but we can always be the main characters in our own stories.